is what I want you to do is that we'll start the session off, but before we start the session off, you have to kind of keep your mind blank and keep the slate clean, as they say. If you think of how current digital commerce works and then you try to figure out how to fit the jigsaw puzzle, which is ONDC, into it, you will struggle. What I want you to do is just forget how digital commerce is done now and kind of keep a very open and blank mind in terms of what is the possible and potential opportunities on ONDC. You need to think it that way in order to kind of really gauge and get how, how dramatically different this is and what the potential opportunity scope is for everyone. Okay. With that, I will start. I'm going to just mute my camera till I present so that I don't have any buffering of my presentation.
Yeah, so Marichu, I have a question before you start presentation. So, audience want to know what is ONDC and why ONDC? What makes ONDC a great platform for restaurants and how does it help them?
Sure. So, Pooja, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take about 15-20 minutes. I'm going to
Sure.
give a little bit of a construct. I hope that's okay. Please let me know in case I
Sure.
need to keep it sharper. The idea is everyone needs to first understand what is this new network commerce way of doing business rather than the platform way of doing business. And to start with, ONDC is not a platform, right? It's ONDC is a network. So I think that is what I'm going to try and explain. And if at the end of my presentation, everyone has a sense of the difference between a network and a platform way of doing business, then I think I have achieved my objective. Yeah. So with that, let me start. Are you all able to see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay, just give me a second. Just give me a second. That's why it wasn't working. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Not yet.
1 minute. I think I need to make one quick change. Just give me a second. Let me try again. Is this now visible?
No.
Not yet, Marichi.
Just give me a second. I don't know why I'm struggling with this one. Just give me a second. Normally it should work. Let me do one thing. Just give me a second and let me re-log into the call. Yeah, just give me 1 minute. I'll just
No problem. No.
log in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Let me try again. Is this now visible? No.
No.
Okay. Girish, are you logged in through your laptop?
Yeah. Just send it.
I just sent you a link and maybe you can just share it.
Sure.
Screen. Just sending it to you. I've sent it to your WhatsApp link. Are you able to access it?
Just give me a sec, please.
I'm so sorry about this. It was working. I don't know why it stopped. All of a sudden, the share is not working.
And in the meantime, can you send this to Pooja as well, just to kind of avoid any.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Give me a second. Pooja, I don't have your email. Can
I'll
you?
just
Yeah.
share. Yeah.
Sorry, all for this slight delay.
Just give me a sec. I think so I'm able to load it. Yeah, I think Marichi. Yeah, it's visible now, Marichi. Marichi, it's visible now.
Great. Sorry for the slight delay.
No
Okay.
problem. No.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll quickly start. So first up, I want to start with giving a sense that ONDC is a government-backed Section 8 not-for-profit organization, and our whole objective is not profit-driven. Our objective is to grow digital commerce in the country. Currently, if you see how digital commerce is set up in the country, very small part of retail is covered via digital commerce. Less than 6 to 7% of the retail penetration is on digital commerce. We have very limited share of the smaller cities on digital commerce, and digital commerce is still confined to the metro tier 1 cities, and that's the bulk of where digital commerce comes in. So the whole objective, I think, came when when COVID hit, and a lot of merchants, and I know restaurant community particularly suffered quite badly during the COVID days. Government felt that there was need to grow the digital commerce presence in the country, because that helps to not only kind of give you more access to business, but it also helps merchants in times of their merchants figure out and configure the business the way they want to do it. Okay. Now this, you have to understand, this is a objective from an overall perspective. So any product and service which can be digitally sold and bought, whether it is B2B, B2C, or C2C, any of these services and products can be on ONDC. So ONDC is not a food only platform or a network. It is a digital commerce network which covers anything and everything which can be digitally sold. Okay. So if you think about, if you look at what the current commerce model is, right, e-commerce, there are essentially two ways in which a person can do digital commerce, right? One is either you have a brand and you build your own digital commerce presence. In that case, some of the biggest hindrances are the cost of acquisition of customers, because that is one of the biggest pains which a brand would face if they are going direct on digital. Logistic dependencies, you will have to build the logistic capabilities and manage that, whether it is through 3PLs or whether you build your own service fleets. and finding the right tech partners. I mean, if you have to go digital yourself, you need to have the right e-commerce platform available for your customers to interface. So if you don't find the right partner, that becomes a challenge. On the platform side, which is the other way to do, is obviously the big elephant in the room is commissions and marketing spends, where a lot is being spoken about and how challenging it is becoming. To be fair, I think platforms also have to spend a lot of money in doing all the activities, which is customer acquisition, seller management, etc. But it does translates into higher costs. Control on pricing is one of the other big one, which a lot of merchants complain on the platform world, where they don't have absolute control on the pricing of their product. Discounts can be burned, offers sometimes get put out without a merchant's knowledge, and that is somewhere the merchants feel that they need more access. And I think a big grouse is that most of you, and I think most of you will kind of agree, that you don't get enough access to customer data. Now, when you don't have access to customer data, it becomes very tricky for you to plan your businesses and kind of start forecasting the right kind of products to sell and when to run what kind of offers. So these are some of your current e-commerce challenges, right? And essentially, these are the two ways in which you can only do digital commerce right now. There's no third way available right now. Now, what this has done is it has led to certain challenges. Okay, one is there's market concentration, where there are certain entities, and this, if you look at all sectors, right? This is not just in food. Whether you look at cab aggregation, whether you look at ticketing, whether you look at fashion, whether you look at grocery, any product category you look at. A few entities are very large, and unless you are kind of dealing with those entities, chances of you kind of getting access to large customer cohorts is becomes lower, right? Now, what this does is that when you have large entities in an ecosystem, or in a way kind of driving the ecosystem, it creates a huge entry barrier for new players to come in, because a new player who has to come in has to put in that much extra effort and that much extra money in order to compete with those entities. It also limits innovative ideas and innovative solutions which can be brought to the market, because either you have to do it as per what the existing players are doing, otherwise you can't participate in digital commerce, right? So what ONDC has been designed to achieve is essentially provide choices, and I'll keep coming back to this word choices, right? And this is a very important word which all of you must kind of absorb very, very closely. Choices for merchants to decide who they want to be online with, when they want to be online with, what pricing they want to run, which offers they want to run, which transactions they want to be part of, whether they want to do COD, they don't want to do COD, whether they want to do hyperlocal, not do hyperlocal, do intercity. Everything goes back to the merchant. So now a single entity or the person through whom you're doing digital commerce does not control that any longer. The control comes back to the participants. So every participants, whether you are a seller on the network or you are an application on the network, you have the choice and decide how and decide your terms and conditions of your trade. Okay, you can decide what are your commission percentages you are comfortable paying, and not participate in transactions which are beyond your prescribed limits or beyond your threshold. So there's no compulsion to be part of every single transaction which comes on the network. Discoverability becomes agnostic to size. Right now, if you're not there on some of the larger aggregator platforms, your discoverability gets severely hampered, because these platforms have access to large customer bases, and if you're not with them, then you do not get the kind of exposure which you need for growing your business. Also, for smaller and new players, and we kind of picked it up a little in the last slide, is that to build that entire ecosystem, to fight the ecosystem where there are large entities already in the ecosystem, becomes harder, and for them to build the entire value chain becomes that much harder. So first of all, before we go further, you have to understand what ONDC is and what ONDC is not. ONDC is not a platform, it's not a product, it's not an application. So you cannot go to Google Store or Apple Store and download an ONDC app. If you can, then that's a false app. Someone is kind of using the ONDC name to falsely market itself. So ONDC is not an application or a product. It's not a single model of doing business. There are multiple models which can be looked at, and it's a fertile ground for innovation. Uh, ONDC is not a, excuse me, a governing body or a central intermediary or a regulator. We are only a facilitator for the commerce to grow, and and we are very clear that all we need to do is we provide the guardrails in order to ensure that openness and transparency of what open network is trying to enshrine is there on the network, beyond which how business is conducted, who you want to do business with, what are the commercial terms you want to set for yourself, are completely in the hands of the ecosystem players. We do not define it. The ecosystem players define it, and every ecosystem player has a chance to decide which transaction they want to be part of, which ecosystem they want to be part of and not. Okay. And it's a market led community initiative, so we are an open network. We are evolving, our protocols are evolving. We take a lot of consultation with our existing network participants as well as larger ecosystem players. We've done workshops with the NRAI and some of our larger ecosystem partners to figure out what are some of the big solves we want to do, say for example for food. So it's an initiative where everyone is involved, and we are very open to new ideas and to solving some of the key challenges which you face in order to grow your business. So now this slide may look a little complicated, but just follow me a bit. So if you look toward the left-hand side is how currently digital commerce business happens, right? Which is the platform way. You have two platforms here. You have buyers and sellers attached to those platforms. Now, buyers and sellers of products and services on one platform are restricted to only whatever that platform brings to the table, right? So in this example, platform A, which is the left hand side platform, if you're a buyer on that platform, you can't buy from sellers on the other platform unless the seller is also on the same platform, and vice versa. Correct. So these are closed ecosystems, so you can only participate in transactions with all the entities who are on the platform. What ONDC is trying to do is build an open network. Okay. It's an open e-commerce marketplace we are building, where once an entity is integrated onto the network, you can transact with anyone on the network. Okay. So here what happens is, the difference is that when you join the ONDC network, unlike in a platform world, you integrate with a platform and then you deal and work only with whatever that platform has to offer. On the ONDC network, you integrate with the network, not with a particular platform. And once you're integrated in the network, any entity who is on the network, whether they're selling goods, they're selling services, whether it's logistics, whether it's a restaurant selling food, whether it's demand generation application who's bringing customers, all of them can seamlessly integrate and interact with each other. The beauty of this is that today there could be 10 buyer applications who are building demand, and tomorrow there could be 100. Once you're a seller and you've integrated with the network, you don't have to worry about doing one-on-one integration with every single entity who comes onto the network. Once you've done an integration with the network, any entity which comes onto the network is automatically open for you to do business with. Okay. Now think about this as an e-com. What happens in the easiest parallel I can draw for you is your email ID, right? Now, if I have a Gmail user and I want to send out an email to say Piyush, Pooja, and Girish, I don't need them to also be Gmail users, right? Now, that's the closed platform way, where they would have to be on Gmail in order for me to be able to send them communication. Now, they could be on a Ciferon email ID, Girish could be on a GrowthFalcon ID, Pooja could be on a Yahoo ID or a Rediff ID. And I could send an email quite easily from my Gmail ID to any of them, right? What this is being done, how this gets done, is the open protocol on which the entire email clients are built on, right? Which is the SMT protocol. What SMT protocol allows is that irrespective of your email client, you can send communication and receive communication to anyone, anywhere in the world. Correct? You don't have to be restricted to that particular entity with whom you are integrated with. Now think about the same parallel, and I try to draw the same parallel. So ONDC is like the equivalent of a SMTP protocol for email, right? So ONDC is building a network where once you're connected to that network, anyone can then transact with anyone else. Should we come back to Q&As after this? We have a separate session. So maybe Venkat, if you could just type in your question in the chat, and Pooja, you could then moderate the questions at the end.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me explain to you how this works, how this network looks, right? Now, what happens currently in digital commerce, right? You have essentially three activities which need to be done in digital commerce, right? One is demand generation, where you bring in customers, where customers are able to search for products, they're able to build carts and do payments and do checkouts, right? Second is the seller enablement, where new sellers can join the network, can be onboarded. The catalogs are digitized. The catalogs are managed. Once an order comes in, the order fulfillment and return cancellation process happens. Third is fulfillment. When an order is received, the product has to be delivered, right? Product or service has to be delivered. So that's the fulfillment phase. Now, currently, the way digital commerce happens is all of this happens within one ecosystem, within one platform black box. Nothing goes outside. Whatever happens within that platform black box. Now, after ONDC, what we are trying to do with ONDC is that we are trying to unbundle this entire piece, right? Unbundling of all these three activities into three segregated separate activities. Now, once you've segregated these three activities into a buyer application, seller application, and a logistic application, now an entity doesn't have to do all of these activities in order to be able to do an entire e-commerce transaction. Now, think about currently, if you want to sell right now, right, and if you're a brand, you need to do your brand acquisition, you need to do your customer acquisition. So you have to do marketing, which is your demand generation, which is a costly effort. Then you have to do fulfillment. When an order comes in, you have to get the order delivered. That means either you have your own delivery fleet or you have 3PL tie-ups, and then you're dependent on whatever tie-ups you've been able to build. Now, on the ONDC network, you don't have to do everything in order to do digital commerce or sell online. If you're a seller, if you're a restaurant, all you need to do is get your catalog digitized and get onto the ONDC network. And that's it. You don't have to spend an iota of money beyond the basic promotions, offers which you want to run in order to do demand generation. Demand generation becomes the job of the buyer application or whoever is playing the role of a buyer application. The seller is essentially providing catalogs, providing products, providing best services, providing best offers, and that's it. And there is another entity which can come in and provide logistic services to everyone on the network. So now a seller doesn't have to worry about, oh, I need to do a tie-up with 3PL players, or I have to build my own delivery fleet. The seller can just decide, a restaurant can just decide, I am great at what I do. I cook this cuisine, I cook these dishes, this is what my forte is, and just focus on that and let the demand generation be done by someone else and fulfillment be done by another entity. Okay. Now, how this will work is, I'm trying to, if you look at this chart, now you have ONDC which sits in the middle, which is the network. You have buyer applications whose core job is to do demand generation. Who are the buyer applications currently on ONDC network? You have buyer applications who bring in large cohorts of customers. You have buyer applications like Paytm. You have buyer applications like PinCode, which is a phone pay company. You have buyer applications like mobile telcos who are joining. You have buyer applications like the likes of JioMart and etc. who are joining. You have buyer applications in the form of banks who are joining. You have buyer applications in the form of cab aggregators like Ola who are joining, who are basically bringing in their customers. Okay, so they sit on the top side of this. So the buyer application side, you'll have multiple buyer applications who are plugged into the network and they're bringing their customers to the network. Similarly, on the other side, you have sellers, right? Sellers who can come directly onto the network. But in order to come directly on the network, there's some amount of technical integration which is required. Now, in case you don't have tech teams or tech capabilities, then you can use our existing network participants like GrowthFalcon and join the ONDC network, where you don't have to do anything. They will do the entire onboarding for you. Once you're on the network, irrespective of how you come onto the network, once you're live on the network, every single buyer through every single buyer node which is live on the network can see you and discover your catalogs. So now you don't have to be having one-on-one types with buyer application A, buyer application B, C, D, E, and F, and onwards, as and when new buyer applications come in. As and when new buyer applications come in and they go live on the network, they will automatically start discovering you as a seller and your catalog, provided they want to deal in that particular category. Okay. So what it does is that it takes away the need on, as I said earlier, doing one-on-one integration with everyone who comes on through the network. So your integration is essentially one-to-many, where you join the network, and once you join the network, you automatically get connected to everyone, rather than doing one-on-one tie-ups and one-on-one negotiation and one-on-one connects with everyone. Okay. Now, similarly, like buyer and seller here, you are a restaurant, you are a seller of your food. You have buyers who are buyer of your food and products. Similarly, you have logistic players who are seller of logistic services. And in that case, a seller can become a buyer of logistic services, right? So products and services, anything can be sold onto the network. One important thing you have to understand here, and which is a huge, big differential step change compared to a platform world, is the one time when you get onto the network, your registry is network wide. You're not registered at a platform level. What that means is that all your reputation ledgers, everything, your reviews, ratings sits on the network, not with a particular partner. And Girish, sorry, I'm going to use this as an example just to highlight it. Supposing you've connected to ONDC network through GrowthFalcon today, but you feel for whatever reason GrowthFalcon is not providing you the relevant services, or you feel that someone else is providing you a better service, all you do is automatically negotiate your business, your contract with that particular entity, and go live onto the network through that entity, or even decide to go live on the network directly if you do the tech integration. Now, the beauty here is, now whatever reputation you've earned while you were operating under GrowthFalcon is now tagged to you as a seller and not to GrowthFalcon. So when you move as a restaurant, that reputation also moves with you. So it is network wide, and you will earn your reputation on the network. Every single entity here earns the reputation on the network. Whether it is a buyer, so you rate a buyer, the buyer's reputation will be on the network. Whether you rate a buyer application, the buyer application network will be on the network. Similarly for everyone else, which is a great thing because it brings in a lot of transparency, but also it's a negative. So if you have a poor rating, if customers have rated you poorly as a restaurant, then anywhere on the network, however you become visible, whether through GrowthFalcon, whether directly or whether through a third network aggregator, your reputation will still remain the same unless you go and change the name of your entity, right? So that's both an advantage and also to some extent a check for you, in terms of you have to work that much harder to make sure that whatever you are promising from a service point of view, you deliver on the service, because otherwise the reputation which you earn for providing your service will be network wide. Okay. Now, just to give a sense of how a network look like, now this must be thinking, okay, network, I've said buyer application A, buyer application B. So what is exactly a network? So this is how the network looks as on date. So if you see on the top left quadrant, these are all buyer applications which are already live on the network. And as you would recognize some of these are applications which have large customer bases, and they are bringing their customer bases to the ONDC network. That means on their application, when a customer chooses say food, for example, they are able to access all ONDC sellers from that application. Now, currently, if you just add up these buyer application, and these are only some of them who are already live on the network, you have more than 100 million customers who are already available for you. Now, think about it. All your existing platforms put together don't even come close to this kind of customer reach which you will get over here. So if you remember in the example I was saying earlier, now here, if you're a seller, you don't have to worry about demand generation. Just focus on what you're good at, which is making your food available, making the best offers available, and just concentrate on your food. The demand generation is going to be done by this ecosystem of buyer applications. They will generate demand for you. You will showcase your offers, you will showcase your menus, and they will do the demand generation for you. Similarly, on the seller side, Growth Falcon is one of the seller applications which is already live. We have several other which are either live or in the process of going live. We have large brands who are coming live directly, like Jubilant and Rebel Food are looking at going directly live on the network. On logistics, if you remember the chart I presented earlier, the logistic chart, we have multiple logistic providers who are there, who are already providing or are in the process of integration and will start providing on network logistics. Okay. And then you have enablers. We have like Ciferon, you have DotPay, Paid Puja. If you're connected to, or Urban Papa, if you're connected to any of these entities, they have back-end tie-ups with our existing seller applications. Like Ciferon has a tie-up with Growth Falcon. So you don't need to do any work in order to get onto the ONDC network. Via the Ciferon integration of Growth Falcon, you can go directly live onto the ONDC network. Okay. Couple of points I wanted to mention over here. The network is very flexible. You choose and decide what you want to do. You can choose to use network logistics, or if you have your own delivery fleet or you do self delivery, you can decide not to use the on network logistics. So nothing is compulsory. If you have a logistic fleet, but you say, for example, are in certain parts of your city, you have your own logistic available, and in some parts you don't have coverage, you can use a hybrid model where you can use a mixture of your own logistic tie-ups or your own logistic availability, and then fill it up with whatever else is available on the network and use that. So there are essentially two ways in which logistic works: on network and off network. On network logistics is all logistic providers who are integrated to the ONDC network and offering their logistic services to anyone on the network. Off network means whatever backend tie-ups you have, say for example with existing 3PL players, or if you have your own delivery fleet or you have your own riders or delivery boys, that is off network. You can use a hybrid version of both. Again, you choose what you want to do and you choose how you want to use logistics over here. Just to give you a sense, a lot of you will be wondering and saying that, okay, from a customer experience point of view, in a platform, everything is controlled. And here there are three different entities or more than three entities. There's a different buyer application, there's a different seller application, there's a different logistic provider. How does this all work? How does this work? So everything works seamlessly. A customer interacts the same way as they do on the platform. Their interaction point is the buyer application from where they will place the order. And that's it. All issues which they have, any problems they have, they will raise it to their buyer application, and that's it. They don't have to go chasing around and finding who's the seller application and hence who's the seller through that application and try to get a resolution. The buyer application in turn will raise those issues which on behalf of the customer to the network facing partner, which is either the seller application or a directly integrated seller, to get a solution to the customer. So for a customer, nothing changes. Customer raises an issue to the buyer application and will get a resolution from the buyer application, period. That's it. So for a customer, there is nothing, there's no change. It's the same way in which you do business right now. What goes under the hood is a little different, and everything happens in real time. Everything is connected via APIs and everything happens real time. So when an order gets placed from one buyer application through APIs, the search result goes out to all the seller nodes which are there on the network. All the seller nodes who have that product and are selling that category of product will receive that search request and will decide whether they want to respond back to that search request or not. When they respond back to that search request, the buyer will make his choice, his or her choice, choose the seller from whom they want to buy that product. Post this, ONDC's role gets over, and then it's a bilateral transaction between the buyer and the seller application. So ONDC's role is essentially in the search and discovery phase, and that is where we want to ensure that there is transparency and equal opportunities for everyone to be discovered and to be able to do business with everyone else. So if you look at the network, and I've just pulled out some numbers for you guys just to get a sense of how ONDC network has progressed. These are a couple of days old, but you'll still get a sense. On-time delivery within 60 minutes. So on an average for a 5 kilometer radius, our on-time delivery is upwards of 95%. If you look at our seller count was less than 500 sellers, and Girish from Growth Falcon was one of our first seller network participant on the food side, and he can relate to it. We were barely 500 sellers in January, February. Today, as we are counting, we are closer to 64,000 restaurant partners who are live on the ONDC network. They are live across 250 plus cities. And if you see our fill rates are in the upper 90s. So while there are different entities and who are involved in ONDC, and a transaction happens through multiple entities, you see from an experience point of view, there's really not much difference from what happens on a platform. So this is where we are. So how can you join ONDC network? One is via a seller aggregating network partner, like we've already mentioned, which you have Growth Falcon, you have Magic Pin, you have UEngage, and multiple other network partners. If you scan this QR code, and I'll leave this on for a bit, you'll get you'll get a Google Doc where you can express your interest. And once you express your interest, you can kind of you fill out that information, and we will get in touch with you either through our existing network partners or directly to help you get onboarded onto the network. The second way for someone to get is directly as a network participant, who, if you have your own tech or you have a tech team available. Even if you don't have a tech team, you could still get on directly using, say, for example, existing network partners who are acting as technology service provider, who can help you do a direct integration. So there are multiple ways in which you can decide. Again, if you remember, I said choices at the beginning, right? You can choose who you want to work with. You can choose how you want to go live. You can choose which transactions you want to be part of. So when the search comes, the search carries with it the commercial terms of the buyer application. Now, you will know at a search level, for each search, you will get the transaction details in terms of what is the commission, etc., which is being charged by the buyer application to generate that order. Now, you would have defined what is your parameters and what are your thresholds from a commercial point of view, and you decide whether you want to participate in that transaction. So you could have search coming from, say, three different buyer applications. One says saying I'll charge 1%, one is saying I'll charge 3%, one who's saying I'll charge you 5%. And supposing as a seller, you define your threshold as 3%. And I'm just doing hypothetical numbers just to kind of illustrate the point. What will happen is that you will respond back to buyer app A, which is 1%. You will respond back to the search query from buyer app B, which is at 3%. But you will not respond back to a buyer app C, which is charging you 5%. Now, it is for the buyer app to decide whether they want to continue charging 5% and get a short assortment, or relook at their commercial terms to make it attractive for more and more sellers to participate. So just the way it is open for a seller to decide which transaction they want to be part of, similarly, a buyer application can also decide that for demand generation, what are the commercial terms they need to set up in order to generate the orders for you on the network. So that's kind of in brief a little bit about ONDC and the network. And you can scan this QR code, which is to our website, and get more information, or write to us at team@ondc.org, and we are happy to kind of answer your queries. With that, I will stop, and over to you, Pooja.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Marichi, for such a detailed presentation on ONDC and its benefits. I would like to know one more question to you. What will be the effect of ONDC on F&B industry in the next 3 to 4 years?
So think about it this way. Currently, if you are dealing in food, right, you don't have too many options, right? There are two big entities whom you'll have to do business, or you'll have to do business direct. And if you remember the slide where I showed the challenges when you do either through a platform or when you do a direct to consumer route, either your costs will be very high, which will make it difficult for you to challenge the larger players or generate sufficient orders, or the commission structures are such on the larger players where you may find it challenging to work with. What ONDC will do is now you are not dependent on these two entities alone, or these three or four, or whichever sectors you are, those few entities, because now you have multiple buyer applications who are building customers for you, right? Now, once you're connected to the network, you're no longer dependent on a single entity for orders, because the network will have multiple entities who are going to do demand generation. So for you, a particular entity or a particular channel may not work, but say buyer application A may not work for you because of the kind of profile of customers they have. But a buyer application B, C, D, E will still work because they have the right kind of profile of customers for your product. So you're no longer dependent on a single entity for doing business, where you have a network, and that network will help you get business at the terms and conditions you set to. How digital commerce will change, what we see is that because now entities are going to come in, and you remember that slide where I showed three distinct entities, right? There's a demand generation funnel, there is a seller application who enables sellers and manages sellers, and there's a logistic funnel. All the entities who are coming, and if you recall, and I'll just put back that chart, all these entities, if you see, these are all entities who are really, really good at what they do, right? So all our network participants who are joining the network are coming with their core strength. And core strength is where they have the best optimization of their abilities, best optimization of their resources, and the most efficient cost structures to do those activities. Now imagine a network where multiple such entities come and bring in their absolute strengths and are no longer doing what they're not really good at. Look at the cost optimization which happens on the network, and how it impacts both the overall growth of business for you as well as the commercial structure on the network. If we see currently on the ONDC network, commercial structures, and I will not call out, but we are seeing on an average a commercial structure is in single digits. So buyer applications, seller applications, all put together for a restaurant partner, commission structures are in single digits, which is very different from what it is currently on the platform world, right? So there are huge optimizations which are happening, and you will get access to newer customers, newer applications, because right now you are also dependent on a few players deciding which cities they want to operate it, where they will generate orders for you, because they have to also optimize their costs, right? Now, when you have multiple partners joining the network, you might have buyer applications who are very good in tier 2, tier 3 cities, right? And are very good at generating orders from tier 2, tier 3 cities. And suddenly you have access to those tier 2, tier 3 cities to expand, which currently you don't have. Also, because it's a multiple category play, multiple categories will be live already on the network. There are 6 categories which are live, which is food and beverage, grocery, fashion, electronics, home and decor, health and wellness, and mobility. These are already live on the network. Financial services are going live, as well as some 30 additional categories which are going live. There's a lot of goodness which you will get on the network, because in the current, say, let's from a food perspective, most of the players who are currently doing food are only doing food, right? And they're restricted by their ability to bring customers only to do food. Now in the ONDC ecosystem, which is a multi-category play, a customer may come to book a cab but may end up buying chola bhatura, or a customer may come and buy a pizza and may end up buying a shirt. So the cross pollination which happens in a multi-category play, because there are multiple network partners involved, is very, very high. Here I've only shown you an ecosystem of F&B alone. Similarly, I have a very robust ecosystem on the fashion side, on the electronics side, on the other category side. So the cross pollination opportunity will help businesses optimize their costs, logistic partners to deepen their reach, because now they are not dependent on one category or one particular product or one particular entity. They can optimize their cost across multiple entities, across multiple categories, when they look at their expansion strategies into next tier of towns. Buyer applications will choose their forte. Some will be very good in metro cities, some will be focused in the tier 2, tier 3 cities. And again, everyone will bring all those abilities to the network. So now you're not dependent on just one entity saying, okay, now I will go to tier 3, now I'll go to tier 4, or I will cover this area in this city, or I will cover this time of day, or this business opportunity. The opportunity lies with multiple entities doing different things and bringing innovation to the network. I hope I was able to give some semblance of an answer to what you asked, Pooja.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Marichi.
Yeah.
So, a last question. Can I ask you, like, how can ONDC help restaurants reach more customer and how their business grow their business? In how many cities is ONDC live currently? Marichi, if you can give
So
some number.
again, I think I already covered that. So in this slide, if you see number of live cities, you can take a count. We are already live in 250 plus cities, and this network is growing as Girish opens up new seller opportunities, as Girish onboards, say for example, new Growth Falcon onboard new restaurant partners in different cities. Those cities become live. So you have to understand it's a supply side game, right? As supply density increases in a city, buyer applications will be more inclined to driving demand in those cities. A buyer application has to also put effort in driving demand, right? So if there is a town which has only 7 restaurants, the ability for a buyer application to generate orders out of just 7 restaurants versus a city which has 1,000 restaurants is very different, right? So as supply density improves across cities, the demand generation fund increases. There are multiple entities who are coming and bringing large cohorts of sellers on the seller side. So our distribution is improving. We have partners who are focused in tier 2, tier 3 cities. There's a new partner who's joining the network, who's bringing, say, 150 sellers in a Dimapur, as 300 sellers in a restaurant partners in Aurangabad. Now, all of these, now when they get together, that whole network effect will help the network grow much faster.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Marichi, for such a wonderful presentation. So now we'll move to Girish. Girish, let me invite you to share some information on the role of Growth Falcons on ONDC.
Thanks,
Girish?
Pooja.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Pooja. Thanks a lot, Marichi, for such a very detailed presentation which talks about ONDC, that ONDC is not a platform, it's a network, and the benefits ONDC brings onto onto platforms. What I'll do is I'll not take more than 5-7 minutes in the interest of time. My objective here would be to talk about the role of Growth Falcons on ONDC. How do we once a restaurant gets onboarded onto Growth Falcons via Ciferon, what are the different services that Growth Falcons typically offers? I'll just touch upon over these in the next 5 minutes, Pooja.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. So can I go ahead?
Yeah, please, Girish.
Perfect. Thanks. So quick background for the people who joined a bit late. So what does Growth Falcons do? So as Marichi spoke about, there are 3 key network participants on ONDC: the buyer app, who generate a demand; seller app, who take care of generating a supply and onboarding them onto ONDC; and then we have the logistics app, who take care of fulfillment. Right. Growth Falcons specifically, right, with its strengths, is working with leading POS players like Ciferon and onboarding their partner restaurants onto ONDC. So which means to say, driving discoverability, demand, fulfillment, and making sure the payouts happen is all where the responsibility of Growth Falcons comes in, right? Now I'll specifically focus upon how is this whole construct is going to help restaurants come on to ONDC via Ciferon POS. Right now when ONDC started, as Marichi mentioned, right, Growth Falcons has been pioneers with respect to F&B sector. We're one of the very first adopters of ONDC. We spoke to around 200 restaurants, right? And when we spoke to 200 restaurants, there are 3 key pain points that came out very clearly, right? 99% of them said these are the 3 key pain points. Point number 1 is very high take rate, right? With the monopoly duopoly in the market, the take rates are somewhere between 25 and upwards of 40%, right? So very clearly, all 99% said, hey, we need network like ONDC where we could have a much better take rate while Marish has again mentioned it, take rates or commissions on network are single digit, right? And we'll talk about it later. Probably Piyush can talk about it later. What are the typical commission structure on the network? Point number 2, which is typically demand, right? When I say demand kind of translates to discovery, right? If you are discovered on the network, that's when you get a demand. But in the present state where there is monopoly, duopoly, even the discoverability is typically controlled, by the platform. You don't pay commissions, higher commissions, you don't run ads, your discovery will get impacted, right? Point number 2. Point number 3, very, very important. You don't have access to your own customer data, right? You actually, merchants say, hey, I don't have control on my own business. Most of the cloud kitchens also that we have spoken to heavily rely on these top aggregators, right, to drive business, right? So, these are 3 key pain points which all of those 200 restaurants that you spoke to actually highlighted it, right? And that was the exact time when ONDC came in, and it was actually kind of catering to all these 3 pain points and kind of pushing or giving back the control of the business to the restaurants, right? The merchants are being given the power back to decide where they want to get discovered. Number 1, have a control on their own merchant data, which means now they have access to their own customer data. They can run marketing campaigns to drive additional demand. And not only that, with a much, much lower take rate, their top lines and bottom lines are actually increasing. So that's where typically GrowthFalcons, Ciferon, and ONDC will come together and help Ciferon restaurants to kind of drive incremental business. Now I'll quickly kind of touch upon by 1 slide or 2 slide of presentation as how this whole flow happens on ONDC, right? In terms of the overall flow from the onboarding till the point the discovery until the transactions happens. 1 or 2 slider, please, and then I know Pooja, you can take on. Okay, let me share my screen.
Yeah, Girish.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it's downloading. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Let me know when I should go ahead.
Perfect, Girish. You can start.
Perfect. Okay. Now let's look at this ecosystem. On the left-hand side, you see sellers which have been onboarded by Ciferon. And you see seller app, which is GrowthFalcons over here. We kind of work closely with Ciferon to ensure that the onboarding of Ciferon merchants are seamless, right? And once Ciferon, typically merchants give the KYC to Ciferon, and it's further validated by us. In next 24-48 hours, a restaurant will start getting discovered on multiple buyer apps. So on the right-hand side, you'll see buyer apps like Paytm, PinCode, which is PhonePe, Ola, No Broker Road, we have Magic Pin. A restaurant will now start automatically discovered across these multiple buyer apps. And we're just talking about those few apps now, which in itself has around millions of subscriber base. And think about it that in going ahead, we'll have multiple buyer apps coming in tier 2, tier 3 cities, which will then further add to the discoverability, right? So one problem of discoverability which a merchant had is getting solved, right? So tomorrow, let's say Paytm or any of the buyer apps says, hey, I don't want to work with XYZ sellers. Sellers can take a decision. Okay, great. I don't want to work with you. I have 5 other buyer apps whom I can work with, which means to say the complete control of where a merchant want to get discovered on lies with the merchant. Okay, so discoverability. So better discoverability will lead to a better demand. Now think about it. It's just not one app. That typically you have duopoly in the market, either Swiggy, Zomato, where you get discovered, and if one of them says no, your total demand gets impacted majorly. Right now here, you're not just getting discovered by one. You're getting discovered by multiple buyer apps, which means a higher demand, which means an incremental sales. Right? Point number 1. So point number 2, some of them had asked a question about logistics, right? So there are a combination of on-network logistics, off-network logistics. Today we have partnered with Shadowfax, Dunzo, Loadshare. We have also partnered with off-network logistics, which means to say we are working with Extreme, which is Zomato Extreme, which typically covers 800 plus cities, right? So we're trying to kind of make logistics as as sophisticated as strong as possible. The supply is across as many cities so that the delivery is seamless, the fulfillment is seamless, right? So that's where the logistics comes into the picture. So if you really look at the order flow in a very kind of a small use case perspective, let's say for example a biryani kitchen. I stay in Bangalore, let's say in area Kundanalli, and let's say biryani kitchen uses Ciferon. As soon as Ciferon gets all the documents, KYC documents, and that's been pushed onto GrowthFalcons platform, in 48 hours, biryani kitchen is now visible on Paytm, pin code, Ola, no broker and other buyer apps. Now let's say Piyush opens up Paytm app and scrolls down to find ONDC, clicks on ONDC, and then he looks at biryani kitchen in this area and then plays the order. Right? As soon as the order gets placed, the order request comes onto GrowthFalcons platform. We identify a supply, okay, in that area, which means to say we broadcast this request to Shadowfax, Dunzo, Loadshare, Extreme, and then pick up a specific logistics provider based on price and based on serviceability and based on the quality of service. Right? All of this information is being given on a real time to the customer at checkout. Right? So at checkout, customer will get to know what is the price that they need to pay for food, what is the price that they need to pay for logistics, right? And finally GST, right? The experience is going to be similar the way it is being done today with respect to Zomato and Swiggy, right? Once our orders, has been typically logistics confirms, now the order lands onto Ciferon, right? And the way typically you accept the order, for any Zomato, Swiggy, the order can be accepted by a merchant or it can be auto accepted. And once it's auto accepted, then the logistics partner typically comes to pick up the order from the merchant and then delivers to the customer, right? So here you see even there are 3 players, but the overall experience will still remain the same, right? And once this whole transaction gets completed, customer is able to track this particular order in real time. They have a tracking mechanism in any of these apps, typically the payments which GrowthFalcons take. Right now we have spoken about demand, we've spoken about fulfillment, now payouts. So most of the merchants will say, hey, when are the payouts? So payouts are typically done weekly. Let's say if orders are placed between Monday to Sunday, payouts are done on every Tuesday. So payouts are done on a weekly basis. You get a payout report in detail, order wise, in terms of which customer placed the order, what is the mobile number, what was the average order value, food, GST, logistics, and what is the typical commission that we've deducted. A very, very detailed weekly payout report will be generated and shared with every merchant, right? So that's where the whole typically the responsibility of GrowthFalcons come in. What we also do to kind of generate an additional demand is work with merchants, typically to create banners and push it on to Paytm, pin code, Ola, or whichever sort of buyer apps it is, which will help us to drive this incremental demand. We also work with each of the seller, I would say, to the merchants to kind of see if we can, kind of push a better discount, to the consumers, since our take rates are much low, and that will same get reflected across multiple buyer apps. So all in all, discoverability, driving demand, fulfillment, and payout, right? And apart from obviously customer experiences are taken care of by GrowthFalcons. This is how the typical user journey and the merchant experience will be maintained via GrowthFalcons platform, right? One last slide. I've typically covered in terms of what all GrowthFalcons does. I spoke about generating demand, logistics, both online and offline, customer care, so that we make sure that the order to delivery fill rate or fulfill rate is much higher, where Marichi has already spoken about it. It's greater than 96%, right? And I also spoke about the recon and settlement, where the monthly payments, monthly reconciliation across multiple buyer apps is taken care by GrowthFalcons itself, right? Last slide, which I want to say, ONDC plus GrowthFalcons plus Ciferon. I think so this will really help you help the Ciferon restaurants to drive incremental sales. Okay, but I just wanted to kind of give a kind of a caveat over here. ONDC as a network has just started. It's just 2-year old. So if you're expecting that, hey, I'm going to start getting as many sales as that of Zomato, that's the wrong expectations, right? But this particular platform is for you, for the merchants of Ciferon. Please make the best use of it. the way you manage your orders, the way you kind of make sure that the orders are accepted and delivered on time, the platform becomes, the network becomes more stronger, more better. And that's all for the whole network is for you, right? So that's what typically I want to share about and conclude, Pooja.
Yeah, perfect, Girish. Thank you so much. I'm sure it will makes lots of sense for restaurants now to get onboarded onto ONDC. So now let me quickly pull in Piyush to talk about Ciferon merchants can benefit from ONDC. Piyush, I have few questions to ask.
Yes, Pooja.
So how does Ciferon make it easy for restaurants to start using ONDC? And secondly, how does the ONDC order flow happen on Ciferon? Will it be different to what is happening today with respect to Zomato or Swiggy? Or how seamless is it to accept orders? Yeah,
Sure.
Piyush.
Yes, that. Thank you, Malichi and Girish, for the introduction. So basically, if there are restaurants over here who are already using Ciferon, so they know basically how Zomato, Swiggy orders flow into our system and how they are processed. So before going to that, I'll start with the onboarding first, like how you are going to get onboarded on the ONDC network. So I'll just quickly share my screen. Just let me know if it is visible. I have shared.
Yeah.
Is it visible?
Right. Yes, yes.
Yeah. So basically, there is a very minimum data required to get onboarded on ONDC, because when you've onboarded with Ciferon, we already have your assigned number, we already have your GST number, we already have your menu, we have all your outlet details, address, lat long, and all we already have with us. Okay, so apart from these are only the few basic details that we require when we want to onboard a restaurant on ONDC. So it is basically whether you want delivery support you require or not. So if you are not requiring, basically when you say you don't know, so you have to deliver the rider the order yourself by using your own riders or your own other third-party integrations. What would be the delivery charge? Okay, which type of payment modes you are accepting? So like you are accepting COD or you are accepting prepaid. Okay, so these are the minimum fields that would be required when you need to get onboarded to ONDC, and you can simply do the registration after filling all these details by clicking on this button over here. And the publishing of the menu can be done over here. So we have all the platforms over here where your menu is listed. You can simply go and publish the menus directly from the Ciferon portal only. Right, so that's the part of the onboarding, and as shared by Girish as well. So different apps take different times from 24 to 72 hours to get onboarded on ONDC. So as and when you go live on each of the apps, so suppose you go live on Paytm, so we will be giving you information that you are now live on Paytm, you are now live on PIN code, etc. and all. So the restaurant will be informed. So once will be informed at all times that where they are live right now. So once this we go live at any one of the platforms, the menu publish can be done over here. Fine. So whatever menu we publish over here, we will be able to see it on the ONDC network. So regarding the incoming orders, so what we know is that every outlet is already onboarded on Zomato and Swiggy. It is like a mandate right now that they get onboarded on Zomato and Swiggy. So we have aligned the ONDC order flow with the same flow as well. So whenever you receive an order on the ONDC network, you will see it on the point of sale system wherein you can accept the order, mark it as ready, and depending upon what type of delivery support you have chosen, you will have either the option of like if you have asked for delivery support, a rider would be assigned by the ONDC network, which details you will be able to see on the dashboard. And if not, you are delivering it yourself, so you can put your rider name, phone number over there, so that the same information is communicated to the customers as well, that this rider has been assigned for the delivery purposes. And once you receive, so if it is a prepaid, the order is marked complete as soon as the order is delivered, or it is a cash on delivery. So you can like manually settle the orders into the system when you receive the cash. Either your rider receives the cash or you receive the outlets on the cash. So the flow at the restaurant point of view. So processing a ONDC order would be the regular process would be in the same lines with how you you used to process it to Zomato and Swiggy. There is not much a learning curve over there, or you need to do some things differently for that. There is no such thing like that. We have seamlessly integrated in that way only. Similarly, when you do an outlet on-off option, you have the option to mark your outlet from Zomato, Swiggy, and ONDC on-off edit. Similarly goes for item out of marking the item stock in and stock out. You can do it from a single view, single button that whenever you're marking in particular sandwich out of stock, so it will be out of stock from all the ONDC apps. Like it will be from Paytm, pin code, and all everything. So everything is at one click. You need not know multiple clicks on over there. And regarding the settlement of these orders, which have been done through the COD network or some on the prepaid model. So the settlements would be within the 7 days as mentioned by GrowthFalcons, directly through GrowthFalcons. So you will be receiving the amounts within the 7 days in your accounts. And for regarding the support or how the menu will be formulated or how the training would be given, the Ciferon support will be there to help you on all aspects. Like they will be giving you training on how everything has to be done. And how to accept orders and how to do this. And in any case of issues like outlet not visible on ONDC network or through Ciferon support is there, would be there to help you. And the restaurant has to reach out through the Ciferon to any of our existing channels or email, WhatsApp or chat, and we'll be happy to assist you. I guess that's all, Pooja, from my side.
Okay. Piyush, one more question. Like, how can merchants show their interest with respect to ONDC onboarding? In the sense, any form to fill up and what documents they need to give on onboarding process?
Yeah, sure. So if any restaurant just want to get onboarded on ONDC network, they can contact us through our usual channels, that it is either through WhatsApp or through an email or through a call or through chat support that we channel offers. So once the restaurant registers their request, one of our representatives from the onboarding team will contact them and will collect their documents, will help them in finalizing the menu of them and start on the process of onboarding. The documents collected would be the PAN details, their FSI details, GST available, their menu details, and their bank account details through which the settlement has to be processed.
Yeah. So thanks Piyush. It's so very important to make onboarding process seamless to have merchant onboard at scale. So thank you so much. And coming, yeah, Girish.
I have a question. Piyush, do you want to touch upon, let's say, the take rate and the onboarding charges? Because people would want to know about.
That's one important. So basically, there are no onboarding charges of getting on ONDC via Ciferon network. So basically, all other aggregators have their fees to have their onboarding fees, but getting an onboarding on ONDC via Ciferon is absolutely free, and plus assisted by our our support team over there. And the benefit would be, and the one major benefit would be that the commission is only 8%. So unlike with the other aggregators where the commission rates are around on an average around 25 to 30%, here only 8% is the commission rate. And if we are going with the this delivery partner, then additional delivery fees required, which would be an absolute amount and not on a percentage basis. Okay. So the most important reason, like leaving the technicalities apart, like how is the network built and all, and this most important reason to get onboarded on ONDC and promote your restaurants on ONDC is the single digit commission fee. That is actually 1/3 of what we are paying to other aggregators right now. I hope that answers your question, Krish.
Thanks a lot, Piyush. I think it answers. I'm sure these were some key questions which every restaurant would have been, would have kind of raised. But it's good that you have answered those questions. Thanks for that. Pooja, over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Piyush. So before we get on to the question answer session, any closing remark, Girish, from your side, or from Girish, Piyush, or Marichi, if you guys want to take any last remark?
Sure, I'll just add to it, and then probably I'll ask Piyush or Marshi to add.
Sure.
Again, to all the the merchants over here, Ciferon merchants over here, getting onboarded onto ONDC is free, right? So it's your opportunity now today to get onboarded onto ONDC. Point number one. Your biggest pain point being the take rate, right? The take rate in the industry is between 25 to 35-40%. On ONDC, it's just 8% plus taxes, right? And over and above that, logistics charges, as Piyush was mentioning it, there is no separate fee for logistics, where the same fee will be billed to the customer today, right? And settlements typically will happen on a weekly basis, so your money is safe. Because GrowthFalcons has been working on ONDC network for the past 1.5 years and is specifically handling 4,500 restaurants across 80 plus cities, and we plan to kind of touch around with Ciferon and other partners, we plan to touch around 10,000 in the next couple of months, right? So my only request to everybody is this is the time that you leverage the benefits of ONDC, and this particular network is built for you. So please kind of make a best use of it, right? I just want to complete with that. Over to you, Piyush or Marichi, if you have some other thoughts.
Yes, definitely, that's Girish. So basically, this ONDC network is, as Marichi mentioned, is backed by the government of India. Okay, and is maturing day by day. Okay, so we expecting in few months or few years, we'll be having this network pan India. And the biggest challenge the restaurant faces while to accept orders apart from the leading aggregators right now is the delivery part. Like even if they accepted the orders, either through the contactless portal or through their own delivery channels and all. So the major difficulty is how to deliver those orders. So that major difficulty has been addressed by the ONDC very effectively. So you basically you need to just get onboarded on ONDC, and you have access to multiple delivery partners. Obviously, depending upon which city you are in right now and how is the availability over there. But yes, definitely, this is the future with the e-commerce industry in India.
Perfect. Marchi, any other points from your end?
No, Girish, I think you guys have covered most of it. I would rather open it up to a quick Q&A, because
Sure.
we need
Thanks.
to kind of do a hard stop in another 10 minutes.
Correct. We are already the perfect. Pooja, I think so. We can get into Q&A session. Take probably 2-3 questions, and then we can close this.
Yeah. So there is one question I quickly read out. So to onboard on ONDC through GrowthFalcons, we need to necessarily also sign up on Swiggy or Zomato through GrowthFalcons?
Yeah, I'll take that question. So it's Mac, right? So no. If you are using Ciferon, please just kind of reach out to Ciferon, and you just have to kind of get onboarded via Ciferon onto GrowthFalcons. That's point number one. If you're not using Ciferon, even in that case, you don't have to kind of go through us for getting onboarded into Swiggy and Zomato. If you're coming to GrowthFalcons directly, let's say via through app, you'll get access to ONDC network. That's what it is. I hope I've answered your question, Mac. Perfect. I think so. You can go to the next question, Pooja.
Yeah. So second question from Mahadevan. It's by joining ONDC, do I become part of other network in future? I think that's what means from his query. Mahadevan.
So Mahadevan, could you just clarify what you mean by other network?
Yeah, like for example, this is Venki here. So the main thing is like some of the comments that were there in the call was about the association of ONDC with the comparison against email and the protocol and things like that. So the confusion was around beacon as a protocol versus ONDC as a network. We were somewhere in between talking about like the way SMTP is there, ONDC is like SMTP. So I wanted to actually the confusion here is more like ONDC it's a new kind of an animal. We are trying to create an analogy with something in the past, like an email or something, which might not really fit properly, because if you look at it like a network, even in this network, it is like a closed network. We are calling it open network for digital commerce. But what I mean by closed network is like, suppose if I create another network tomorrow, like a Namaya 3, for example, happened in for this thing, it's not automatic that it is part of ONDC. There is something that people need to do to connect networks so that it creates a mega grid, but there is nothing like that at the moment which calls that as like a this thing. So basically when you said that when you onboard an ONDC, you automatically get everything on everywhere else, and it's like a comparison of an SMTP protocol. So I just wanted to point out that at the protocol level, we probably have something like a beacon, and the exact equivalence of ONDC is probably not. It might be like a Yahoo or a Google, but maybe not like a Google or Yahoo, maybe at some other level, which is currently not there. So we are trying to find an equivalence and saying that, it is definitely, it is better than the earlier platform approach, but it is still like today a closed network, because it is, I'm calling it closed network only because other networks, if tomorrow come, they don't automatically be interoperable with ONDC. It is something that needs to be worked on. It is not automatic that by just the
No,
name that it is open.
so
That's
Venkat,
it.
sorry, I'm still a little confused about your question. What do you mean automatic? All you need to do is connect to the APIs, right? ONDC is built, and I'm assuming you have a little more tech background. So I'm saying that
Yes,
ONDC is built on top of the backend protocol in terms of open APIs.
correct.
All an entity has to do is connect to the open APIs, and that's it. So I'm not
Uh,
sure what
no,
exactly it
actually, I'll
means.
tell you what I mean. Because every
Yeah.
network, when you're saying ONDC, what is ONDC? You have got a registry on which
Mhm.
somebody has to come on board and put it. It's not just about the protocol. There is a
Yeah.
registry which is owned by somebody, right? Like an
Mhm.
open ONDC.org owns the registry. So if tomorrow there are more people who implement the backend protocol, they don't automatically be part of the ONDC.org registry. They have to do something to be part of the ONDC.org registry. So it is like, so tomorrow somebody might come and create new kind of networks where they may say that, this is a new registry. You can join my registry. So if you join a
Yeah.
different registry and multiple registries come on board, so then you have multiple networks. Then it is what it will look like is ONDC is just a closed network with only participants in that
No, so
network talking to each other.
Venkat, all someone has to do is build a tech plug to connect that network to this network. That's it. So and that's the beauty of ONDC, because we have not even figured out what are the various solves people will be doing. Someone, for
Exactly.
example, could be doing a solve just building tech plugs and connecting it to the various other networks. Someone could be
Exactly.
doing tech solves and say, "Yeah, I'll just do a tech solve where I will create cataloging as a service, and that's it." So there are
Yes.
services. Technology service providers is a very vital role which is played in the network. People will build SDK kits, people will build connectors, and will figure out ways to do it. So you have to understand, ONDC is not here to orchestrate anything, right? We have just created a framework and we are enabling the growth of the network. What actually happens on the network is completely dependent on the network partners. We are not saying this is right,
No,
that is wrong, or what
correct,
is
correct, correct.
and
No,
what
I don't
is.
want to take too much time, Marichi. I think basically the main point I'm saying that in any network, any registry, there are multiple set of business rules, like from a governance standpoint or things like that. Like these are the network agreements that everybody signs
No,
up
so
with.
that is still there. So what happens,
Yeah.
Venkat?
Mm.
I didn't get into that because I didn't feel it was relevant here. But what happens is any network partner who joins the ONDC network signs a network contract. The network contract aligns the broad do's and don'ts, which you can openly read, which is we've listed on our ondc.org site. Please go to the resources section and you'll be able to access all our documentation, all our policy
Sure.
documents, all our good behavior, bad behavior documents, etc. What ONDC is trying to do is create a level playing field for everyone. That's all that we are trying to do. And ONDC's role is only involved in ensuring that the level playing field is ensured and no one games the system and creates closed systems within that. Beyond that, commercial transaction, what business you want to do, how you want to build businesses, what are the solves you want to build, what you're wanting to
Got
solve for, is something which will grow on its own. Think
it. Sure.
about how internet worked, right? I mean, internet is just a
Exactly.
place where it is creating businesses to join.
Yeah,
Once you
actually, that's
cross the
that's a
network
very
layer,
interesting analogy. I'm saying when you're looking at internet, I see ONDC more like a GoDaddy, which is basically creating DNS names for all the people who are there on the internet.
why
And
why why are we creating DS? We are not creating any names. I mean, yeah, what is a network, right? Network is the infrastructure, right? In I mean, so that everyone on the call understand. I mean, think about it from the offline world. I've just made
yes,
a road in a place, right? And once I've built the road and I've laid the pipeline, I've left it for people to come in and decide, okay, I'll build a school here, I'll build a hospital here, I'll build a residential complex, or I'll build a playground here. I'm not defining what it is. All I've done is build the infrastructure. What you build on top of the infrastructure is completely up to you as an organization and your thoughts in terms of where you can take it. We are not defining what can be done and what can't be done on the network. A network is just a framework, right? We build a framework, we've done the broad guideline. What I suggest to you, Venkat, is I'm not sure whether you've been through a documentation. Go through this
I've been
documentation
I've
and
been with it.
more than happy. And please write to team@ondc.org. You can call out my name over there. And if you want to reconnect, happy to reconnect with you separately or
No
have you
issue. I think you have answered
anyone
pretty much most
from
of
our
the
tech
questions. It
teams.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was just talking about beyond ONDC. I'm talking about where interoperability across networks and across subnets and things like that will come up. So it is like I didn't
No, it
want.
is, for
Yeah.
example, we have interoperability with the open network. So we build those. So it's part
Yes.
of the protocol. What I would suggest is, I don't know if you studied our protocol documents, etc. Do go through our technical documentation. You'll have access to all our documentation is openly published on our site. You can download something called an implementation guide, which will have our tech specs, technical documentation. Please go through it in details. You'll be able to find a lot of your answers over there, and write to team.ondc.org. We'll be more than happy to solve some of your other questions.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay,
So
thanks,
yeah, I
Marichi.
think so. We are running out of time. We have only one last question, and I think so we need to wrap this up. We are 4:30.
Okay,
So probably one last question. There was one question specifically to Marchi.
so there is one question I can take. Are the network metrics of all participants available through some front end or at least through API? What does this mean? I don't know.
Sorry, I'm not sure. Okay, so first of all, data ONDC doesn't hold any data. Okay, let me answer it this way.
Yeah.
We don't hold any data. We are just a flow through. Data is held by the entity who's generating that data. We are a flow through. You as a seller will have access to all orders which come to you, and hence you will know which buyer application is sending you orders, what time of day, who's doing better for you and who's not. You will not know the same data for the seller next to you. Okay, so you are only accessing data for which you are part of that transaction. So any transaction which you are part of, you will have access to that data. You will not automatically, once you're plugged into the network, get access to every single data point which is available across the network. Okay, so I don't know whether that answered to some extent what was being asked, but please feel free to call out if stats etc are something which entities will come on board and build. Seller network partners will give that intelligence. Buyer application will publish that information. ONDC is not a repository or holder of information and data, and hence we will not be the ones publishing anything. We are governed by data privacy laws which are prevalent in the country. So anything which is there, anything by law which is allowed will be allowed. Anything which is not allowed by law is not allowed on ONDC itself. ONDC is not like a get out of jail card free that something is not allowed for everywhere, but at ONDC it will be allowed. So whatever is legal binding, what are the legal statutory requirements, all of those have to be followed on the network.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Marichi. So with this, we come to the end of our webinar. And I would like to thanks to all our participants, attendees, and a big thanks to our speakers for being a part of webinar, and especially Marichi, Girish, and Piyush for sharing their thoughts on ONDC and its benefits. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. And
Thank you.
yeah, and for Ciferon merchants, we are giving onboarding as a free to you all. So go ahead and fill up the forms for to get onboarded onto ONDC. So thank you everyone, and thank you for being such a wonderful audience. And see you all in the next webinar. Have a great day. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.